The mayor took the corner box again. So predictable.
One last act, Vivienne, then we go home. Students. Children at a keyboard, nothing more.
Indulge them, darling. The evening's nearly over anyway.
And now, the young pianists of the Holloway Conservatory. Please welcome them.
That ring. I know that ring. I'd know it anywhere.
Where in God's name did that boy get it?
Nathaniel. You've gone pale. What is it?
That crest. It can't be here. It's her ring. She kept it. Adeline. After all these years.
The ring my son wore, and the name he never knew. The lights swept across the rows of the Thornwood Opera House, gold and slow, the way they always did before the last performer of the night. From the VIP box, Nathaniel Ashby watched the way a man watches a thing he owns, half bored, one hand resting on the velvet rail. Then the light caught a teenager in the front row of performers, a boy adjusting his cuff before he rose, and on that boy's finger, a glint of old silver, a crest Nathaniel had worn his whole life, a crest he had handed back to a woman once and told her it was not for her. He leaned forward before he understood why. The evening had belonged to him, the way most evenings did. The Ashby name was on the donor wall by the entrance, second from the top, cut in brass and polished every season. When Nathaniel walked the marble lobby, people turned the way iron filings turned toward a magnet. A slight lean, a lowered voice, a hand half raised in greeting they hoped he'd return. He was 53 now, silver at the temples, and he wore it well. The tuxedo was cut to him alone. The cufflinks were his grandfather's. He moved through the crowd the way he moved through everything, certain of the floor beneath him. Up in the box, he took the seat that was always his. A waiter brought a single glass of the red he preferred without being asked. Below him, the hall filled, 1,000 small sounds folding into one warm hum, programs rustling, a cough, the tuning of strings from somewhere behind the curtain. His wife of many years, Vivienne, sat beside him, her attention on the crowd. She catalogued faces the way some women catalogue jewels, who had come, who had not, who had aged. She said something about the mayor's box. Nathaniel nodded without hearing. He was tired tonight, though he would not have called it that. Just a heaviness that came sometimes, on evenings like this, when the applause was for the room and not for anything a man had actually done. The program listed the final act as a young pianist's showcase, students from the Holloway Conservatory. Nathaniel almost skimmed past it. Children at a keyboard were not why men like him kept boxes. But the MC's voice warmed the hall, and the students filed onto the stage in a neat row, and the lights swept down across them, gold, unhurried, revealing each face in turn. That was when Nathaniel saw the boy. He sat at the end of the row, 16 or 17, back straight, hands folded in his lap. Dark hair, a jaw that hadn't finished setting. He was calm in a way the others weren't. The girl beside him fidgeted with her sheet music. A younger boy kept glancing at the crowd, but this one simply waited, his eyes forward, as though the noise of 1,000 people were a thing that happened to other people. There was something in the way he held himself, something Nathaniel could not name and could not look away from. The boy lifted his right hand and adjusted his cuff, a small, unconscious tug, the gesture of someone easing a jacket that fit a fraction too tight. And the stage light caught his finger. A ring, silver, old, heavier than a boy that age would ever buy for himself. On its face, worn but unmistakable, a heron in flight. Nathaniel's glass stopped halfway to his mouth. He knew that ring. He knew the exact wear along its left edge, where his own grandfather had worn it thin against a lifetime of paper. He had worn it himself for 9 years. He had taken it off with his own 2 hands on a cold morning, in a small rented room, and he had set it in someone's open palm, and he had walked out the door. "Nathaniel," Vivienne said, "you've gone pale." He didn't answer. Below him, the MC read the boy's name into the microphone, but the sound didn't reach Nathaniel through the roaring that had started in his ears. He was staring at a heron in flight on a stranger's hand, and the floor he had always been so certain of was no longer there. 30 years fell away between one breath and the next. He had been 23 then, and in love, the way only the young and protected can afford to be, recklessly, without once counting the cost. Her name was Adeline. She sewed for a shop 3 streets from the university, and she had a laugh that made the expensive people around him seem suddenly loud and false. She owned 2 dresses and a battered upright piano she'd bought second-hand and paid off a little each month. She played it in the evenings with the window open, and he used to stand in the courtyard below just to listen before he ever found the courage to climb the stairs. They married quietly, no brass wall, no donor list. A borrowed suit, a paper ring until he could afford better, and a small room that smelled of thread and lamp oil. When she told him she was carrying their child, he had spun her around in that little room until she begged him to stop, laughing, both hands pressed to her belly. He had not told his family. He knew what they would say. He learned exactly what they would say the afternoon his mother, Margaret Ashby, arrived at the shop unannounced. She looked at Adeline's worn shoes and the pins in her apron and the thread on her sleeve, and she smiled the way a blade smiles. The clan had already chosen, she explained on the drive home, a merger, a partner's daughter, a marriage that would tie 2 houses together and secure everything 3 generations had built. Vivian. It was arranged. It had been arranged for months. His mother made the calculation plain. The accounts would close, the doors would shut, and the men who had always returned his calls would stop. She spoke of Adeline as a passing error, forgivable in a young man, ruinous if made permanent. He was young, he was afraid. He had never in his life been without the money and the name and the soft certainty they bought. And when the floor tilted, he grabbed for the only thing that had ever held him up. He told himself he had no choice. That was the lie that made it bearable. He went back to the small room one last time. Adeline was at the piano, and she stopped playing when she saw his face, because she had always been able to read his face. He did not sit down. He stood by the door as though he were already leaving, because he was. He told her the marriage would be annulled, that it had never truly been valid. His family's lawyers had found a way, that the child would want for nothing, that money would come every month, quietly, and she must never speak the Ashby name to anyone. She did not cry. He had expected crying, and its absence unmade him more than tears would have. She only stood very still, one hand on the closed lid of the piano. He took the ring off then, the heron ring, his grandfather's. He had meant it as a kind of mercy, proof he was giving her something real, some piece of the world he was closing to her. He held it out. "Take it," he said, "for the years." She looked at it in his palm. She looked at him. "This name isn't for you," he said, because his mother had said those exact words to him, and repeating them made him feel less like the one who was leaving. "But keep the ring, so you'll have had it." She reached out and took it, and her fingers did not touch his. Then she turned back to the piano, lifted the lid, and began to play again, softly, steadily, as though he had already gone. She played until he could not stand in the doorway anymore. She was still playing when he reached the street. He got in the car. He married Vivian that spring. The money went out every month, into an account, and every month it came back untouched. He had told himself over the years that she must have grown proud and stubborn, that she was punishing him. Up in the box, 30 years later, watching a boy adjust a heron ring, Nathaniel finally understood that she had not been punishing anyone. She had simply never needed him at all. She had kept the child. He knew that now, watching the boy's hands settle over the keys, though he had spent 3 decades not letting himself wonder. Later, much later, when he learned the shape of the years he had missed, he would understand what those years had cost, and what they had made. Adeline had left the little room within the month. The account she never touched sat gathering the Ashby money like dust on a grave, and she raised the boy on what she earned with a needle and, eventually, with the piano. They had been poor, not the graceful poverty of stories, but the real kind, the coat worn a second winter, the shoes lined with cardboard, the careful arithmetic of a single coin, turned over twice before it was spent. She took in sewing at night. She cleaned the recital hall of a music school in exchange for lessons her son could not otherwise have had. And she taught him herself, at that same battered upright, both of them on the bench in the lamplight, her hand guiding his small fingers to the keys. Again, she would say, not sharply, patiently, the way you say a thing you believe in. You have it. Again. The boy, she had named him Elias, took to it the way some children take to breathing. By 9, he outplayed her. By 12, he was playing pieces that made her stop her needle and simply sit and listen with the window open, the way a young man had once listened from a courtyard below. She never told him his father's name. but she told him about the ring. She kept it in a small wooden box on the shelf above the piano, wrapped in a scrap of blue silk, and when Elias was old enough to ask about the heron, she would take it out and let him hold it. "This is where a part of you comes from," she told him. "An old family, an old crest, a man who could not stay. That is his loss and not your shame. Do you understand me? You carry the good of it. The name means nothing. The blood means nothing. What you make with your own two hands, that is what you are." She never used the ring the way she might have. She never went to a lawyer. She never went to the papers. She never demanded a single thing from the house that had turned her away, though there were winters when the demanding would have been easy and warm. She kept it for one reason only, so that when her son was grown, he would know exactly where he came from, and know that it did not own him. "When you're grown," she promised him, closing his fingers around the silver, "you'll wear it, not because it makes you an Ashby, because it makes you the boy who was loved enough to be told the truth." He got into the Holloway Conservatory on a full scholarship at 15. She sat in the last row of the audition hall in her one good dress, her hands folded, and when they read his name among the accepted, she did not make a sound. She only pressed the folded program flat against her knee, again and again, smoothing a crease that was already gone. She gave him the ring the morning of his first showcase. He was nervous, he hid it well, but she was his mother, and she saw it. She slid the heron onto his right hand and cupped his face and told him the same thing she had told him at the Keys 1,000 times. "You have it. Go." He tugged his cuff over the ring out of habit, the way he always would, and he went. If this story is reaching you, take a breath with me for a moment. Stories like Adeline's, the quiet ones, the people who love without being seen, they only travel when you help them. If her patience means something to you, comment the word "loved" below, so I know you're here. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and stay with us. There's more to this night than a man in a box has understood. Now, back to the opera house, and the moment his hands began to shake. Nathaniel did not remember standing. Vivian's hand was on his sleeve, saying his name, but her voice came from very far away. On the stage below, the boy with the heron ring had risen from the row and crossed to the piano at the center of the light. He sat. He squared his shoulders. He tugged his right cuff back, unhurried, and set both hands over the keys. And there, plain to the whole hall, the old silver caught the light and threw it. Then he played. Nathaniel did not know the piece. He knew nothing of music the way it was meant to be known, but he knew that the sound coming up from that stage was the same sound he had once stood beneath a courtyard window to hear. The same phrasing, the same held breath before the difficult passage, the same gentle recovery after. The boy played the way Adeline had played, because Adeline had taught him. The same hands, 30 years apart, shaped by the same patience Nathaniel had walked out on. His hands found the rail. He gripped the velvet until his knuckles went white. He was doing the math now, the terrible simple math he had refused for 30 years. 16, 17, the right age, the exact right age. The ring he had handed to Adeline in a rented room, worn now by a boy with a jaw that hadn't finished setting. A jaw Nathaniel had seen in his own photographs from a lifetime ago. His son. The word arrived in his chest like something breaking loose, and he made a sound he had never made in public in his life. A small, torn breath that turned Vivian's head sharply toward him. Her hand tightened on his sleeve. He did not feel it. He was watching his son play a piano at the Thornwood Opera House, while 1,000 people sat in the dark, and not one of them knew that the man in the finest box in the house had turned this exact boy away before he was born, in a room that smelled of thread and lamp oil, with his own two hands. The music built and broke and softened. When Elias lifted his hands from the keys at the end, the hall was silent for one full heartbeat before it stood, the whole room rising, applause coming down like weather. The boy stood too. He bowed, once, composed even now, and as he straightened, he did the thing again, the small unconscious thing, tugged his cuff, covering the ring, tucking it away against his palm, as though it were a private thing he did not perform for anyone. And then, scanning the rows the way performers do without truly seeing, his eyes passed across the VIP box. Passed across the silver-haired man gripping the velvet rail with a face like a man who had lost his footing. Passed across him without the smallest flicker of recognition. Because the boy did not know him, had never seen his face, had a father who was, to him, an old crest and a closed story, and a truth his mother had refused to make into a wound. Nathaniel Ashby, who had never in his life reached for anything that was not already his, stood in the most expensive seat in the house and understood that his own son had just looked directly at him and seen a stranger. He was moving before the applause had ended, down the private stair, past the startled attendant, into the wings where the students were gathering their music and their nerves, laughing, the ordinary noise of young people who had done a hard thing well. And there, at the edge of them, in a plain dark dress that was clearly her best, stood a woman with grey in her hair and a folded program pressed flat against her hands. 30 years fell away a second time. "Adeline," he said. She turned. She did not gasp. She did not step back. She looked at him the way she had looked at him from the piano bench the day he left, steadily, reading his face, already knowing everything on it. "Nathaniel," she said. Not a question, just his name, set down gently, the way you set down something you stopped carrying long ago. They stood apart in the noise of the wings, and for a long moment neither of them spoke. "He's mine," Nathaniel finally said. His voice was not the voice of the man in the box. It cracked down the middle. "Adeline, he's mine." "He's mine," she answered, softly, without cruelty. It was simply the truth, and she offered it as truth. "I raised him. I fed him. I sat with him at that piano for 10,000 nights. Whatever arithmetic you're doing, I already did the living." Across the wing, Elias glanced over, sensing something, and Adeline caught his eye and gave a small, calm shake of her head. "It's all right." The boy went back to his friends. He trusted his mother the way you trust the ground. Nathaniel watched that, the wordless certainty between them, the whole architecture of a love he had never once contributed a brick to, and something in him that had stood upright for 53 years began, at last, to come down. He had never begged for anything. He had never had to. He'd been born on the near side of every door, and the doors had opened before he reached them. His shoulders dropped, and his head bowed, and his hands opened, and every proud line of him folded inward in the dim of the wings, where no donor wall could see. "One chance," he said, "that's all. Let me speak to him. Let me tell him who I am. I have money, I have the name, I can give him everything now. A hall of his own, teachers from anywhere, doors you can't imagine. Let me just..." His voice failed. "Let me be his father. I'm asking you." Adeline listened to all of it. She was not unkind. When he finished, her eyes were wet, but she did not look away, and her voice when it came was steady and low. "He has everything," she said. "He has a hall. He just played it. He has teachers. He has a scholarship he earned with his own hands, and a ring that tells him where he comes from, and a mother who never once let him believe he was thrown away." She drew a breath. "You want to give him doors, Nathaniel. He walked through this one tonight without you. That's what you'd be taking from him. The one true thing he knows about himself. That he got here on his own. Please," he said. It was the only word he had left. "You closed this door," she said gently, with pride, "with your own 2 hands. I watched you do it." She reached out, and for the first time in 30 years, her fingers touched his, briefly, the way you touch a thing to say goodbye to it. Some doors don't reopen, not because anyone's cruel, because the people behind them built a whole life while you were gone, and it's good, and it doesn't need the wound reopened to be whole. Then she stepped back, and gathered her program, and turned toward her son. "Adeline," he said it once more, quietly, to her back. She paused. She did not turn all the way around. "Let him keep the ring," she said. "He doesn't know it's yours. He thinks it's his. Let him go on thinking that. It's the kindest thing either of us can do for him now." And she crossed the wing to Elias, and put her arm through his, and the boy laughed at something she said, and covered the heron on his hand with an easy, unthinking tug of his cuff, and the two of them walked out into the bright of the corridor together, and did not look back. Nathaniel stood alone in the dark of the wings for a long time. He would tell no one what happened that night. Not Vivian, not his mother. Old Margaret, gone soft and sorry in her last years, who would go to her grave never knowing the grandson she had turned away had grown into a boy who filled 1,000 seats. But once, years later, an old man in an empty study, he wrote a single line in a book no one would ever read. "I spent my whole life refusing to beg for anything. Tonight I begged, and the boy wearing my ring didn't even know my name." And on the far side of the city, in a small warm apartment above a street where a window stood open to the evening, a woman sat on a piano bench beside her grown son, her hand near his on the keys, the heron ring catching the lamplight as he played. "Again," she said softly, not sharply, the way you say a thing you believe in. You have it. And he did. Adeline never asked the world to see her. She just loved a boy through every cold winter, until he could stand in the light on his own. And that was enough. That was everything. If her quiet strength stayed with you tonight, tell me in the comments, who is the person in your life who loved you like that, without ever needing to be thanked? Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that the ones who raise us are the ones who truly hold us. Subscribe and stay with us. There are more of these stories to tell and more people worth remembering. Thank you for listening. Thank you for feeling this one with me. I'll see you in the next.